They say forests are peaceful places, green sanctuaries where birds sing and trees whisper in the wind. But some forests don't whisper. Some forests scream. This is not a legend. It is not a campfire story passed down through generations. Something that happened. And if you ever find yourself on the edge of the Bramblepine Woods after sunset, you might hear it too, the cry of the forest that doesn't want you there. But by then it's already too late. It began with 4 friends. Nora, Liam, Syra, and Ethan. They weren't ghost hunters or thrill seekers. They were university students, tired of the city's noise and pressure. They wanted to disconnect. No phones, no internet, just nature. Liam had heard about a secluded forest 2 hours out of town. Untouched, unmarked on most maps, known only to locals as Bramblepine. It's perfect, he said. No one goes there. We'll have the place to ourselves. They arrived late afternoon. The trees stood like an army, tall, thin, and unnaturally straight. There was something unsettling about how they didn't sway, even though the wind pushed hard. The sky was a pale gray, and the deeper they walked into the woods, the quieter it became. No birdsong. No rustling animals. Just silence, thick and pressing. They set up camp in a small clearing where moss blanketed the ground and the trees formed a tight circle. Nora noticed the trees had deep black scars on their bark, as if something had clawed at them. She pointed it out, but Liam laughed it off. Bears, he said. Maybe elk antlers. But something about the cuts didn't look natural. They weren't random. They were deep, uniform slashes, running in vertical lines, almost like tall eyes. Watching. That night, the group sat around a crackling fire, sharing stories and laughing. Yet every few minutes, one of them would glance into the forest. It felt like someone or something was watching from the dark. Ethan joked about it, doing a bad impression of a ghost voice. Ooh, get out of my forest. But the others didn't laugh. Syra's smile faded fast. Do you hear that? She said, suddenly serious. They fell silent. A sound was rising in the distance. Not wind. Not an animal. It was human. Low wail. Far off, but getting closer. At first, they thought it might be another camper. But it was the tone. Raw, agonizing, and full of something deeper than fear. It was grief. Rage. The sound twisted through the trees, rising higher, then cutting off like someone had been silenced mid-scream. Ethan stood, flashlight in hand. I'm checking it out, he said. No, Nora snapped, grabbing his arm. We stay together. But curiosity won. Against Nora's protests, they moved toward the sound. The deeper they went, the colder it became. Their breath turned visible, though it wasn't even autumn. The flashlight beams cut through the mist now curling around the trees. And then they saw it. Woman. Or something that looked like a woman. She stood barefoot among the trees, her white dress torn and stained dark with something that looked too thick to be mud. Her hair was long, hanging over her face, and her arms dangled at her sides like they didn't work properly. The group froze. Ethan called out, Are you okay? Do you need help? She didn't move. Not at first. Then she screamed. Not just with her mouth, but with the whole forest. The trees groaned. The wind roared. That single cry echoed in all directions like 1,000 voices overlapping. In anguish. Something ancient and wrong. The group turned and ran. Branches lashed their faces. Roots grabbed their feet. It felt like the forest itself was trying to trap them. They didn't stop until they were back at their camp, panting, wide-eyed, and too terrified to speak. The fire was out. No smoke. No embers. Just cold ashes. Their tent was gone. Not collapsed. As if it had never been there. Ethan looked at the others. We were just here. We set it up. And then they heard it again, the scream. This time much closer. They ran. No direction. Just away. But the forest had changed. The trees were closer together. The paths they had walked were gone. The forest was moving. Trapping. Rearranging itself. Eventually they stumbled into another clearing. This one wasn't empty. In the center stood a massive tree, black and gnarled, with something hanging from its branches. They stepped closer. It was a woman, or what remained of one. Her body hung from twisted vines, her face half buried in moss, her mouth frozen in a silent scream. But her eyes, those eyes were still wet, still open, watching. Nora fell to her knees and vomited. Syra covered her mouth, backing away. Liam whispered, "What the hell is this place?" Then the tree screamed. The bark split. A mouth opened in its trunk. Not carved, not imagined, real. It bellowed a sound so loud it made the ground tremble. Syra screamed and ran, but vines lashed out, wrapping around her ankle and dragging her toward the tree. Liam and Ethan grabbed her arms, pulling. The vines fought back. The ground beneath them cracked, revealing a dark hole pulsing with breath. They pulled harder. Syra shrieked, her nails ripping into their skin. With one final yank they freed her. The tree howled in rage, the forest echoing its fury. They didn't stop running. Eventually, they collapsed in another part of the woods, breathless and bleeding. It was still night, but the moon didn't shine. The sky was covered in something thick, like smoke but not smoke. More like a living fog. Ethan looked at the others. "We have to get out. We have to keep moving until we're out of this forest." But Nora had seen something else. In the dirt beneath her, something had been carved. Not by them. Not recently. It looked ancient. 3 words. "It never ends." Nora kept staring at the dirt. Her lips moved silently, repeating the words over and over again. "It never ends." Syra sat beside her, shaking. Her ankle bloodied from the vines that had nearly taken her. Liam paced, muttering to himself, trying to remember which direction they'd come from. And Ethan, the once confident leader of the trip, just stood still, eyes fixed on the trees. "They're watching us," he whispered. Nora looked up. The trees were still. No wind. No movement. But she could feel it too. That presence. The forest wasn't just alive, it was aware. And it was angry. "We need to move," said Liam, his voice trembling. "We can't stay here. We need to find the car." "There is no car," Ethan muttered. "Not anymore." "What are you talking about?" Liam snapped. Ethan turned, and his eyes were wide, too wide. "It took it. The moment we entered." "You really think this forest lets you leave?" Nora stood, her legs wobbly. "We don't know that. We haven't tried. We panicked. We got lost. That's all." But even as she said it, she didn't believe it. Still, they had no choice. They walked. Every few minutes, someone would stop and listen. The forest was quiet again, but not peaceful. The kind of silence that presses on your ears and makes you feel like you're underwater. The kind of silence that hides something. After what felt like hours, the trees began to thin. They spotted a dirt trail, narrow, winding between the trunks. Relief washed over them. Looked like a path, way out. But just as they stepped onto it, they heard the sound again. Not the scream this time. Laughter. A child's laughter. Syra turned pale. There were no children here. The laughter echoed, bouncing between the trees. Then came another sound, running footsteps. Small, quick. Pat, 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 pat. Then silence. Then a giggle right behind them. They spun around. No one. Ethan raised his flashlight, sweeping the trees. And then he saw them. Dozens of them. Tiny, round, glowing a dull yellow from within the bark of the trees. Faces began to emerge. Not full faces, just pieces. Jawline here. Nose there. All pressed against the inside of the trees like they were part of the wood. Screaming silently. The laughter rose again, deafening this time. It wasn't joy. It was mockery. Madness. "Run!" Liam shouted. They bolted down the trail, hearts pounding, lungs burning. Branches tore at their clothes. Whispers hissed around them. Words they couldn't understand, spoken in a language that made their bones ache. Then suddenly the trail opened into a clearing. A house stood in the middle. Victorian. Broken windows. ivy creeping up its walls like claws. It shouldn't have been there. No one had mentioned a house. But it was shelter. They burst through the rotting front door. Inside, the air was stale and thick with dust. The floorboards groaned beneath their feet. The living room still had furniture, decayed, moldy but untouched by time. A single oil lamp flickered to life in the corner without anyone lighting it. They stood in silence, listening. No laughter, no screams, just the sound of their own breath. Syra collapsed onto a tattered couch, sobbing. "I want to go home. I want this to stop." Ethan wandered toward the hallway. This place. It's not just haunted. It's cursed. Maybe the forest didn't start like this. Maybe something happened. Nora followed him. "We need to find something. Map. Clue. Anything that tells us what this place is." Upstairs they found a bedroom. Inside, a journal sat on a dusty desk. Its pages were cracked and yellowed. Nora flipped through it, reading aloud. April 3rd. "They said not to build here. The old woman warned me. She said the land remembers. That it screams when wrong is done to it. I didn't listen. I had to see for myself." April 10th. "Trees have faces now. I hear crying at night. My wife says she hears a child giggling outside our window." April 17th. "Took my daughter. I found her shoes at the base of the screaming tree. There was no blood. Just silence." Nora stopped reading. "The screaming tree, it's real. What if—" Ethan began, his voice hollow. "What if everything started there? What if the tree is the source?" "We should burn it," said Liam, appearing in the doorway. "We find it again. We set it on fire. End this. Or it ends us," Nora said. But they had no better plan. They left the house at dawn. The mist had thickened, and the forest seemed angrier. The trees groaned as if trying to speak. But no words came, just the constant threat of the next scream. They walked for hours. Nothing looked familiar. A sound. Crying. Not a scream. Soft, pitiful sob. They followed it, and the trees began to open up. There it was. The screaming tree. The black, twisted monster of bark and roots. Its mouth still hung open. Its trunk pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. Around it, faces stared out from the bark. Hundreds of them. Men, women, children. All frozen in silent terror. Syra stepped forward, holding a canister of lighter fluid they'd taken from the abandoned house. "No more," she whispered. She poured the liquid around the base. Ethan struck a match. The flame roared to life. At first, the tree didn't react. Then the screams came. Real screams. Not echoes. The faces moved. The mouths opened. The tree wailed like it was dying, like it was remembering everything it had done. The forest trembled. The sky darkened. Wind howled in every direction. But they didn't stop. They watched the tree burn. The fire climbed high, consuming every twisted branch. The mouth stopped screaming. One by one the faces faded. Then silence. True silence. The wind stopped. The forest stood still. The tree had become ash. They turned. The path behind them was clear, wider than before. Light streamed through the canopy. They walked. No whispers followed. No laughter. Just footsteps and the rising hope of escape. Hours later they saw the road. Car. Touch. Syra collapsed to her knees. Nora wept. Ethan and Liam stood in stunned silence. They had survived. But as they drove away, none of them spoke. Because in the mirror Nora saw something. In the distance, just at the edge of the forest, a new tree was growing. Twisted. Black. And from within its bark, a single face stared out. Ethan's.